politics and heading back up to Mackinac Island, where Congresswoman Haley Stevens and Senator Elissa Slotkin are talking about their push to keep Chinese cars out of the American market. And they say despite the fact they're both Democrats, the issue is bipartisan.
A kind of a joint effort in many ways to say we have to make sure that we're preventing damage from happening here for our economy in Michigan and America. What is it that's being proposed in this ban?
Yeah, I mean, it literally is very simple. It's just banning Chinese cars from coming over our bridges and tunnels from Canada and over our southern border. We know that Trump poked the Canadians in the eye, or punched them in the teeth, and the Canadians have decided, well, fine, we're going to reverse course and allow Chinese cars, tens of thousands of Chinese cars, to be bought and sold in Canada. And those cars could easily just roll across our borders once they get here. And I think for me, as a national security person, it was really important to say these things are just collecting video, geolocation, LiDAR. They could go to our military bases, our infrastructure sites. But, Haley and I have worked together for a very long time, since we were both freshmen, and she does more the economic side of the auto industry. We are just seeing the Chinese industry purposely floods countries like Mexico, like Germany, and completely destroy the local industry. And we're just not going to do that as an economic issue.
And they're not playing by our trade rules, which is the biggest problem. This is a quarter of a century of China being in the World Trade Organization and exploiting open free market capitalism to the gain of their Chinese Communist Party. They have vertical supply chains. We have a robust, thousands of companies that exist here in Michigan that supply into the auto industry. That's also at threat here. And the national security interests are really quite profound, as our good senator knows.
Well, I think it's important to note that, these cars these days aren't vehicles per se. They're computers on wheels. And get into a little bit of that. Then perhaps, Senator, you can touch on the security concerns. And these are computers on cars, and they have cameras. And if you drive by a place of sensitive intelligence, it can pick stuff up, right?
I mean, look, just imagine someone comes across a bridge. They come across the Ambassador Bridge, or hopefully the new Gordie Howe Bridge, and they drive, and they're in a Chinese vehicle. They are in a BYD vehicle. They drive right up to Selfridge Air Force Base. They drive around it. They take all kinds of video. They take all kinds of sensing. Do you know what kind of information how much we would love to have that on Chinese bases, right? And as someone who comes from the Pentagon, the more fidelity and on-the-ground fidelity you have, the more able you are to do things like cyber attacks, to do things like physical attacks. So it's a very real problem. And now everyone says, American cars collect the same information. Yes, but they're also American companies that are subject to American law. The Chinese Communist Party is not. And again, they cheat. They subsidize their cars so that they're super cheap. They come into a market like Michigan. They undersell everybody and destroy the local industry. And we've got 500,000 jobs here in Michigan with the auto industry.
Congresswoman, talk about the viability of this bill right now in the House. I mean, what are you looking at? What are you truly forecasting, given the tenor and temperature of Congress?
Well, we need to be as aggressive as possible. And the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party has long been very bipartisan. Our senator just led bipartisan legislation. Last year, I actually introduced the No Chinese Cars Act, which was to utilize our trade rules and our structure to implement 100% tariffs. Now, we've got to push on these bills and wake up our colleagues across the country to the needs of the industrial Midwest, to the Michigan manufacturing moment that we find ourselves in. So goes Michigan, so goes the country. And so I feel very optimistic about driving in this point. Look, the president has failed us. He has failed us. He campaigned on saying that he was going to take on China, that he was going to be tough on China. And instead, as Senator Slotkin just mentioned, he started a trade war with Canada. We in Michigan have all paid the price for that. We saw that begin, frankly, with the small businesses, in retail and in the services industry. We're, up here in the Great Mackinac Island, 40% down revenues are because Canadians aren't coming in because he started a trade war with Canada. Now that is going to impact our structure for USMCA. We need that framework, and we need to be aggressive on China. Their bad practices practices, their currency manipulation, their illegal dumping, and what they do to American industries at the expense of not just their country's gain, but with a single party's gain.
Well, we see with Representative Molinar and Representative Dingell, you, Representative Stevens, that there is obviously great support, and there is support in a bipartisan way. However, is that enough to move things forward? Because what people at home are seeing is that, hey, these are great ideas, and they seem like they make sense, but you're talking about people who are loyalists to President Trump who are sitting in that House. Can this get done?
Well, you've seen multiple times over this Congress, actually the most in history, the minority party issuing what we call discharge petitions to move legislation to the House floor and get it passed. You've seen that on the Epstein files, labor laws, health care, of course. We're going to now see that with War Powers resolution coming back up when we return to the Congress. Senator Slotkin passed that through her chamber. And I will tell you, when it comes to American industrial competitiveness, take it from someone who's been recognized as the most effective Democrat for science and tech issues in the entire House of Representatives on these issues. I know how to pass bipartisan legislation. We know how to bring colleagues along. Senator Slotkin has certainly been doing that in droves in this moment. We can't stop.
Do you think this moment will be met with the bipartisan support?
I do. You know, it's interesting. We've had there's definitely different opinions about whether to let in Chinese vehicles into the country, but frankly, a number of Republicans approached us on these issues and said, look, we've got to do something, and we have a big transportation bill that's going to happen by the end of the year. It has to pass, and that's the place where we're going to try and shove some of these bans in. So I actually think there's a bipartisan agreement. Haley works with Congressman Molinar, who is the head of the China committee in the House. They're the strong members on auto issues there, and I think we have all the right. And I work with Senator Bernie Moreno from Ohio. So there's the people who know how to work bipartisan across the aisle understand that these issues are bigger than any one party.